if there was a competition for the worst day ever, Mia Reed would be winning by a landslide. The morning started with disaster. Her attempt at grabbing a quick breakfast ended in humiliation when a reckless bird swooped down and sent her bagel tumbling to the ground. By midday, things only got worse when her impossible-to-please editor forced her to redo an entire article, only to later admit that the supposed errors were just the result of his dirty reading glasses. But none of that compared to the absolute nightmare unfolding in front of her now. There, inside the city's most extravagant jewelry boutique, stood the one person she had spent months trying to forget, Ethan Carter. Mia's stomach twisted. She instinctively ducked behind a nearby display case, pretending to browse, but it was useless. The scene before her was impossible to ignore. Ethan, the same man who had once scoffed at the idea of commitment, who had rambled endlessly about how relationships were just consumer-driven illusions, was now standing beside a breathtakingly beautiful woman, sliding a massive diamond ring onto her finger. Mia blinked, hoping she was imagining things. "Do you like it, my love?" Ethan asked, his voice sickeningly sweet, an affectionate tone he had never once used with her. The woman gasped, holding up her hand to admire the sparkling rock. "It's stunning. I can't wait to be Mrs. Carter." Mia felt her throat tighten. Mrs. Carter? As in, his wife? As in, this was actually happening? And then, because the universe apparently wasn't done tormenting her, Ethan's eyes flickered toward her. For a brief moment, Mia considered bolting out of the store. She could pretend she hadn't seen him. She could pretend she wasn't even here. But no, it was too late. Ethan's lips curled into that smug little smirk, the kind that made her want to throw something heavy. "I moved on first," his expression practically shouted. Mia inhaled sharply, squared her shoulders, and forced a bright smile. "Ethan, wow. Fancy running into you here. What a totally non-awkward coincidence." His brow lifted slightly. "You still live in this area?" he asked, his tone carrying the same condescension as someone stumbling upon an old, forgotten relic. "And you still talk?" Mia shot back, tilting her head. Ethan's fiancée, clearly picking up on the tension, let out a delicate laugh before slipping her arm through his possessively. "Oh, Mia, you look exactly the same," she chirped, eyes sparkling with fake sweetness. "It's like time hasn't touched you at all." Mia's lips twitched. "And you look enhanced," she replied smoothly. "What happened? Did someone accidentally hit the Photoshop button on you in real life?" The woman's smile stiffened. Ethan cleared his throat, clearly eager to redirect the conversation. "So, are you seeing anyone these days?" Mia stared at him. Was this real? Was he actually fishing for an answer? Was he hoping she'd confirm that she was still single, still heartbroken, still spending her nights curled up with a tub of ice cream and tragic love songs? Before she could respond, his fiancée leaned in, her grin widening. "Oh, Mia, you're single, aren't you?" she cooed, tilting her head with mock sympathy. "But don't worry, some people find love later in life. Like, way later." Mia clenched her jaw. That was it. But just as she was about to unleash a cutting remark, something unexpected happened. A strong, confident arm wrapped around her shoulders. "Hey babe," a deep voice murmured right next to her ear, smooth as silk. Mia's breath hitched. "What? Who?" Before she could even turn, she felt a warm hand rest gently on her shoulder, the touch so natural, so effortless, that it was almost believable. "Sorry I kept you waiting," the voice continued, full of warmth and quiet amusement. "Hope I didn't miss anything important." Ethan's smirk faltered. His fiancée blinked in surprise. And Mia? She had no idea who this stranger was or why he had just claimed to be her boyfriend. But suddenly the entire game had changed. Mia could practically see the blood drain from Olivia's face. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just acted. Before her brain could remind her that this was an insane idea, she spun around and kissed the stranger standing beside her. It wasn't a romantic kiss. It wasn't even a well-thought-out one. It was reckless, desperate, a kiss meant for one thing and one thing only: survival. And the worst part? He kissed her back. Not in shock, not in hesitation, but with complete, effortless confidence, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Somewhere in the background, Mia heard Olivia gasp and Ethan stiffen. Perfect. Mission accomplished. When she finally pulled away, she turned to face them with a triumphant smirk. "Sorry, what were you asking again?" Ethan looked like he had swallowed a lemon. Olivia's grip on his arm tightened as if she might spontaneously combust. And just when Mia thought the situation couldn't possibly spiral any further, the stranger beside her did the unthinkable. "Shall we, darling?" he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "We still need to pick out our wedding ring." Mia nearly choked. Wedding? Before she could form a single coherent thought, he had already taken her hand and was leading her away. And that's when it hit her. She hadn't just kissed some stranger. She had kissed Leo Sinclair, the wealthiest, most powerful, and most untouchable billionaire in the entire city. And judging by the smirk on his face, he was having the time of his life. Mia had made plenty of bad decisions before, dyeing her hair neon green in high school, buying shoes 2 sizes too small just because they were on sale, and, of course, drunk texting Ethan after their breakup. But kissing a complete stranger in the middle of a high-end shopping mall? This was a new low. And now? Now she was being kidnapped by him. Okay, maybe kidnapped was a strong word. But Leo Sinclair was definitely dragging her through the mall like they had been married for a decade. Mia tried to ignore the fact that people were staring. Of course they were. He looked like he had stepped straight out of a magazine, while she was wearing a faded t-shirt with an angry unicorn on it. The contrast was so ridiculous that anyone watching would assume she was some kind of paid extra in his life story. Enough was enough. Mia planted her feet firmly on the ground, forcing him to stop. "Okay, what just happened?" Leo turned to her, clearly entertained. "Well, from what I recall, you kissed me. And you kissed me back," he shrugged. "Of course, it would have been rude not to." Mia stared at him. "Rude? You make it sound like you were accepting a wedding toast." His smirk deepened. "Wasn't it?" "It was not." He sighed dramatically. "Then clearly we need to work on our performance." Mia felt her soul leave her body. This cannot be real. She rubbed her temples. "For the love of, who even are you?" Leo raised an eyebrow. "You really don't know?" She crossed her arms. "Should I?" His smirk widened. "Fascinating." "No, terrifying," she corrected. Leo waved a hand dismissively. "No need to thank me for the rescue." Mia let out a disbelieving laugh. "Rescue? I didn't ask for help." "Oh." He tilted his head. "Your ex was looking at you like an old, forgotten relic? You wanted me to just stand there and let him win?" Mia opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. Damn it, he had a point. But she wasn't about to admit that. "Great," she said instead. "Now that you've played the hero, we can both go back to our normal lives." Leo arched an eyebrow. "Not even a thank you?" Mia let out a dry laugh. "Should I send you a card that says, 'Thank you for making my life even more complicated'?" Leo grinned. "A dinner will do." She blinked. "What?" "You owe me dinner." Mia scoffed. "I owe you? You're the one who kissed me back with enthusiasm." "Let's call it a compensatory impulse." She crossed her arms. "And if I say no," Leo shrugged, "then I'll have to let your ex know that we're madly in love." Mia choked. "You wouldn't dare." He leaned in slightly, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Want to test me?" Mia shut her eyes and took a deep breath, desperately trying to think of a way out of this mess. Unfortunately, she couldn't find one. "Fine. One dinner." Leo's smirk returned. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 8. Mia jabbed a finger at him. "If this turns out to be some billionaire human sacrifice scheme, I'm calling a lawyer." Leo chuckled. "Relax. You'll survive." Mia wasn't so sure about that. Hours later, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. What had she just agreed to? And more importantly, what had she started? Mia stared at her reflection in the mirror, gripping the bathroom sink. What am I doing? She was about to have dinner with a man she had kissed on impulse, without even knowing his name at the time. This wasn't a date. This was a full-blown crisis. But there was no backing out now. Sighing, she grabbed her purse and headed out to meet her fate. The moment she stepped into the restaurant, she knew she was out of her league. Everything about the place screamed expensive. The chandeliers sparkled like they were made of actual diamonds. The guests were dressed like royalty, and even the air smelled richer. The waiter barely concealed his skepticism when he saw her, as if he could already sense her bank account trembling in fear. Mia leaned toward Leo and muttered, "If they ask for a kidney as payment, I'm willing to part with one after dessert." Leo smirked. "Relax, it's on me. In that case, I'll have a plate made of solid gold and a drink in a diamond-studded glass." He let out a low chuckle before they settled into their seats. Mia did her best to ignore how effortlessly at ease Leo looked, like he owned the place. Which, knowing him, he probably did. "So Mia," he said, resting an elbow on the table, "tell me about yourself." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I like to know who I'm having dinner with." She crossed her arms. "Fine, I work, I pay bills, and every now and then I kiss strangers to make my ex-boyfriend suffer." Leo tilted his head, amused. "Fascinating. Is that a natural talent, or did you take lessons?" "Sadly, no formal training available. Otherwise, I'd have a diploma." "A shame, I'd enroll." Mia rolled her eyes. "And what about you? What do you do besides being an infuriating billionaire?" "I manipulate situations to my advantage." Mia scoffed. "Yeah, I've noticed." Leo shrugged. "And yet, here you are, having dinner with me." She stared at her wine glass. "I didn't exactly have a choice." He chuckled. And as much as she hated to admit it, Mia was actually enjoying herself. Leo was irritating, sure, but he was also entertaining. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I have a proposal." Mia frowned. "If it's illegal, I'm out." Leo smirked. "Stay with me for a month." Mia nearly spat out her drink. "What?" "You heard me." "I knew it. This is some weird elite human sacrifice ritual." "Not quite." He swirled his wine glass. "I just need you to pretend to be my girlfriend." Mia blinked. "Excuse me?" "Let's just say certain people need to believe it." She narrowed her eyes. "And I'm the best choice, why?" Leo leaned back, watching her carefully. "After that kiss? No doubt." Mia felt her face heat up. "Damn it. And what do I get out of this?" she asked, crossing her arms. Leo's lips curved into an easy smile. "Whatever you want." Mia bit her lip. This was, without a doubt, the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. And yet, it was also tempting. She had never been the impulsive type. She was the kind of person who took half an hour to choose an ice cream flavor. The type who spent days debating whether to buy a new outfit. And yet, here she was, sitting across from Leo Sinclair, the wealthiest man in town, seriously considering fake dating him for a month. She eyed him skeptically. He looked completely at ease, as if he were negotiating a business merger rather than proposing an outrageous deal. "Let me get this straight," she said, tilting her head. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend for an entire month. In exchange, I can ask for anything I want." Leo nodded. "Exactly." Mia narrowed her eyes. "But why me? You could hire a professional actress, a model, someone with more class." She gestured at her t-shirt, which featured an angry unicorn. Leo's gaze flickered to it, and to her surprise, he grinned. "The unicorn has personality. I respect that." She let out an exasperated sigh. "Focus, Leo. Why me?" He leaned in slightly. "Because you didn't know who I was." Mia frowned. "And what does that have to do with anything?" "You kissed me," he said smoothly, "without realizing who I am." "That was an accident. A great accident." Maya groaned, pressing her fingers to her temples. "You still haven't explained why this is necessary." Leo twirled his wine glass between his fingers, as if carefully considering his words. "Let's just say," he said finally, "that my family has certain expectations. And a very important event is coming up." Mia raised an eyebrow. "And if you show up single," he sighed, "it's going to be a problem." She folded her arms. "What kind of problem?" Leo's smirk faded slightly, the kind that involves relentless questioning. "And an attempted arranged—" Mia had no idea what she was about to get herself into. "And possibly a full-blown documentary about my love life," Leo added with a sigh. Mia bit her lip to keep from laughing. "They're really that intense?" "You have no idea." For a moment, she fell silent, turning the situation over in her mind. As crazy as this sounded, it wasn't that outrageous. In fact, it was almost amusing. And if she thought about it, there were definitely a few upsides for her too. For one, Ethan would see that she had moved on. She'd also get a glimpse into the luxurious world of the ultra-rich, a world she'd never have access to otherwise. And if things got unbearable, she could walk away. Leo must have sensed her internal debate because his lips curled into a knowing smirk. "You're considering it, aren't you?" Mia frowned. "Don't put words in my mouth." "I don't have to," he said smoothly. "I already know your negotiation style." She narrowed her eyes. "Oh, really? And what's my style?" "First, you make a dramatic scene. Then you act like you're not interested. But deep down, you're way too curious to say no." Mia's jaw dropped. "That's not true." Leo arched an eyebrow. "No? Then say no. Walk away." Mia opened her mouth, then shut it again. Damn it, he got me. She looked away, annoyed at how easily he had read her. But the truth was, she was curious. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see how the other half lived. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders. Fine, I'm in. Leo's smirk deepened. Knew it. But, she added, holding up a finger, I have conditions. He leaned back, amused. Of course you do. One, she said firmly. I'm not your employee. I don't take orders from you. Leo chuckled. I never thought following orders was your strong suit. Good. Second, I want something in return. His interest piqued. What is it? Mia met his gaze. I want your help getting a better job. Leo blinked, clearly surprised. A job? That's what you want? Yes, I'm sick of where I work. If I'm going along with this ridiculous plan, I want something useful out of it. He seemed to think it over for a moment. Then, with a smirk, he held out his hand. Deal. Mia hesitated, staring at his hand. She knew this was a bad idea. She knew she was about to step into something completely outside her comfort zone. But why not? With a deep breath, she reached out and shook his hand. Deal. Leo's grin widened. Welcome to my world, Mia. The next morning, Mia woke up to a text message. Leo, I'll pick you up at 10. Wear something comfortable. She frowned. Comfortable? For what? She had no idea what to expect, but one thing was certain. He wasn't taking her on a casual stroll through the park. And she was right. Because at exactly 10 a.m., a sleek black car, one that probably cost more than her entire apartment building, pulled up in front of her place. Mia stepped outside, took one look at the car, then glanced at Leo in disbelief. Seriously? Isn't this a little excessive? Leo leaned against the car door, looking effortlessly cool. Nothing is too much when you have style. Mia rolled her eyes but slid into the passenger seat. All right, where are we going? Leo's lips curled into a mysterious smile. You'll see. Mia wasn't a fan of surprises. Leo, apparently, lived for them. And when they finally arrived at their destination, she instantly understood why. They had pulled up in front of an upscale luxury boutique. Mia blinked, glancing around in confusion. Wait, what are we doing here? Leo casually held the door open for her. If you're going to be my girlfriend, you need to dress the part. Mia froze. Hold on. She turned to him, crossing her arms. Are you saying my clothes aren't good enough? Leo's gaze flickered to her t-shirt, specifically the cartoon unicorn printed on the front. I just think your unicorn could use a little vacation. Mia gasped, clutching her shirt dramatically. This unicorn is a symbol of personality. Leo smirked. And now it can be a symbol of retirement. Mia huffed but stepped into the store. Half an hour later, she was surrounded by dresses that cost more than her monthly rent. She tried on a few, feeling completely out of place in the sea of silk and designer labels. But then she caught Leo watching her with a satisfied look, like he was closing some kind of business deal. Something shifted. He was really committed to this. And, strangely, Mia was starting to find the whole thing kind of fun. As she stood there in front of the mirror, adjusting the hem of a dress that looked like it belonged to someone far more sophisticated than her, one thought echoed in her mind. For the next month, I'm going to be Leo Sinclair's fake girlfriend. What could possibly go wrong? This felt like something straight out of a soap opera, where the ordinary girl gets tangled in a ridiculous deal and suddenly finds herself living in a completely different world. That was exactly how Mia felt right now. She was on her way to a high-society event, sitting in a luxury car beside the most talked-about billionaire in town. The expensive dress she was wearing felt foreign on her skin, and her stomach twisted at the thought of the elegant, sophisticated people she was about to meet. Meanwhile, Leo? Completely calm. He drove with effortless ease, as if this were just another casual evening for him. If he was even remotely concerned about the night ahead, he certainly wasn't showing it. Mia stole a glance at him, then sighed. Of course he's not nervous. This is his world. Are you sure this is a good idea? She muttered, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. She still couldn't believe she was wearing something this expensive. If she so much as spilled a drop of wine on it, she'd probably have to sell a kidney to cover the damage. Leo didn't take his eyes off the road. You already agreed to the deal? He reminded her with an amused glance. No backing out now. Mia huffed. Right, and all I have to do is smile, wave, and not run for the nearest exit? Exactly. Running doesn't sound like such a bad idea, she muttered under her breath. Leo smirked. Remind me again, how did I convince you to do this? You're very persuasive. I know. She shot him a glare, but he wasn't wrong. Leo had a way of making things seem both impossible to refuse and inevitable at the same time. By the time they arrived at the event, Mia was already convinced she was in the wrong place. The ballroom was massive, with high ceilings and glittering chandeliers. Everywhere she looked, people in designer gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne while exchanging polite, refined conversation, the kind of talk she wouldn't even attempt to understand. This wasn't just luxury. This was a world she had only ever seen in movies. She didn't belong here. Sensing her hesitation, Leo leaned in slightly and whispered, "Just stay close to me and act like you belong here." "Easy for you to say," Mia mumbled, but she let him take her hand and lead her inside. The reaction was immediate. As soon as Leo entered the room, all eyes turned to him. Mia felt the weight of curious stares pressing in from all directions. People were watching her, analyzing her, trying to figure out who she was and why she was by Leo Sinclair's side. She took a slow breath and straightened her posture. "You agreed to this, so act like it's normal." Then a voice cut through the air. "Leo." Mia turned to see an elegant woman approaching. She was stunning, dressed in a flawless gown that looked like it had been tailored just for her. Her smile was warm, but the sharp glint in her eyes told Mia exactly what was happening. She was being evaluated. "Clara," Leo greeted smoothly, offering a polite smile. "I'd say it's nice to see you," Clara replied, "but I'm far more surprised by your company. You never bring a date to these events." Mia immediately felt the scrutiny shift onto her. Clara's eyes swept over her, head to toe, as if trying to figure out how she of all people had ended up here. Leo, ever the picture of confidence, casually slid an arm around Mia's waist and pulled her closer. "This is Mia," he said effortlessly. "My girlfriend." The words rolled off his tongue so naturally that even Mia almost believed them. Clara's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly. Mia didn't hesitate. She smiled politely and extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Clara took her hand, still watching her with curiosity. "The pleasure is mine." Then, with a smile that was just a little too sweet, she added, "No offense, but you don't seem like Leo's usual type." Mia kept her expression composed, but inside, she was already questioning exactly what that was supposed to mean. She smiled. "Well, I guess he decided to change things up a bit." Beside her, Leo let out a quiet chuckle, clearly enjoying the exchange. Clara, however, didn't drop her gaze. "I just hope she's ready for this world, darling," she said lightly, though the meaning behind her words was anything but casual. "Not everyone can keep up with you." Leo didn't miss a beat. "I think she's doing just fine so far." And to Mia's own surprise, so did she. Clara hesitated for a fraction of a second before flashing a perfectly polished smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes, then turned on her heel and disappeared into the crowd. Mia exhaled slowly. "I don't like her." Leo smirked. "Most people don't." She rolled her eyes. "A heads up about how intense these people are would have been nice." "You didn't ask." His tone was teasing, but his eyes gleamed with amusement. The next hour passed in a blur of polite nods, forced smiles, and conversations Mia could barely keep up with. Corporate takeovers, investment portfolios, luxury vacations on private islands. She nodded along, pretending to be engaged. But in reality, she was more focused on not tripping over her dress than understanding the complexities of stock mergers. Then, just as she thought she was getting through the night unscathed, a voice stopped her in her tracks. Mia, her stomach twisted. She turned slowly, already knowing who it was before she saw his face. Ethan. Because of course the universe had decided to throw this at her tonight. He stood a few feet away, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief, like he couldn't fathom the idea that she was here. And clinging to his arm, as always, was Olivia, who looked equally as stunned. Mia barely had time to react before she felt an arm slide around her waist. Leo. His grip was light, but steady, like he was silently telling her, "I've got this." "She's with me," Leo said smoothly, his voice calm yet undeniably firm. "I thought that was obvious." Ethan blinked, thrown completely off guard. Olivia's eyes widened, her curiosity practically radiating off her. You two are together?" Ethan asked, still trying to process what he was seeing. Mia smiled, seizing the opportunity. "Yes," she said, voice perfectly even. "We're together." Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. then opened it again, only to, once again, say nothing. It was almost comical. His gaze flickered between Mia and Leo, as if waiting for them to crack and admit it was all some elaborate joke. "How long?" Olivia finally asked, crossing her arms. Mia barely missed a beat. "A while now." Ethan still looked like he had been hit over the head, while Olivia narrowed her eyes in open skepticism. Leo, on the other hand, he looked pleased. "Well," he said, his voice casual yet dismissive, "as fun as this has been, we should be going." With that, he gently steered Mia away, effectively ending the conversation. The moment they were out of earshot, Mia let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I cannot believe he was here," she muttered, shaking her head. Leo chuckled. "An interesting coincidence." He glanced at her, amusement flickering in his eyes. "And I must say, you handled it remarkably well." She smirked. "What can I say? I'm a natural." His gaze lingered on her for a second longer before he smiled. "So are you ready to keep going with the plan?" Mia took a deep breath. The first challenge was behind her. Now, the real question was, could she keep up this act without losing herself in it? She lifted her chin. "Let's see where this goes." Leo's smirk deepened, like he already knew this was just the beginning. And deep down, Mia knew it too. Mia still wasn't sure how she had managed to get through the event without tripping over her dress, embarrassing herself, or, worse, accidentally exposing their lie. But somehow, she had pulled it off. That, however, was nothing compared to where she was now. Because at this moment, she was sitting across from Leo Sinclair in an office so luxurious it made reality feel fake. Everything around her, the sleek furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, even the smell of the place, radiated power and wealth. And that's when it truly hit her. This wasn't just some casual arrangement. This was a deal. Leo leaned back in his chair, flipping through a stack of papers with the ease of someone who did this every day. "All right," he said, setting them down with a crisp thud. "Let's make it official." Mia narrowed her eyes. "Official how?" He slid the papers toward her. "Here's the contract outlining our agreement." She stared at him. "Contract?" She blinked. "You're joking, right?" Leo met her gaze without so much as a hint of humor. "Of course not. This is business, Mia." She crossed her arms. "I thought we could just shake hands and hope for the best." Leo smirked. "Nothing involving my family is ever that simple." Mia eyed the papers in front of her. And just like that, she realized, this madness was just beginning. Mia flipped through the pages, scanning the contract in front of her. It was all there in black and white, every detail of their arrangement laid out in precise legal language. She was expected to accompany Leo to social events, maintain the illusion of their relationship, and most importantly, keep everything strictly confidential. In exchange, Leo would secure her a better job and cover any expenses related to their agreement. Mia let out a low whistle. This feels exactly like one of those movie contracts where the heroine ends up falling for the billionaire boss. Leo smirked. "If this were a movie, we'd already be halfway through the story." She rolled her eyes. "So I just sign this? And for a month, I'm officially your girlfriend?" "Exactly." Mia tapped the pen against her lip, weighing her options. "And what if I want to back out halfway through?" Leo leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "Then you let me know in advance, and we end things quietly." He paused before adding, "But of course, it would be best to avoid that. My family is expecting me to finally have a stable relationship." Mia almost choked on a laugh. "Stable? You barely know me." "They don't need to know that." She exhaled, staring at the contract again. It was absolutely insane. But deep down, she didn't have much to lose. And honestly, this would make one hell of a story someday. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the pen. "All right," she said, signing her name. "Let's do this." Leo smiled, clearly satisfied. "Welcome to the agreement, Mia." As she handed him the signed document, a strange feeling washed over her, like she had just stepped into an entirely different world. And something told her there was no turning back now. The next few days passed faster than Mia had expected. At first, she thought pretending to be Leo's girlfriend would feel awkward, but surprisingly, it was almost too easy. Leo made it feel natural, and before she knew it, she was slipping into the fast-paced rhythm of his world. Dinners, business galas, charity events. Her schedule was suddenly filled with glamorous outings, and to her own surprise, she was getting used to it. That evening, as they drove to yet another high society event, Leo glanced at her with a smirk. "You're getting good at this." Mia grinned. "Thank you. I learned from the best." "I hope that wasn't sarcasm." "Just a little." He chuckled, and for the first time Mia realized how comfortable this arrangement had become. Sure, it was all fake, but somewhere in the chaos, they had fallen into an effortless rhythm. But, of course, her life was never that simple. The moment they arrived at the venue, the attention was immediate. Photographers, guests, all eyes on them, not on the actual charity cause, but on the city's newest power couple. Mia held her posture, reminding herself of the rules she had learned from previous events. Smile. Nod. Avoid saying anything that could ruin the story. It was going smoothly, until it wasn't. "Nicholas, darling." A woman's voice rang out through the ballroom, smooth and confident. Mia turned, and her stomach twisted slightly. A stunning woman, tall and effortlessly elegant, was striding toward them with a dazzling smile. Mia didn't even need to ask. She knew. This was an ex. Leo's expression remained polite, but noticeably cool. "Olivia?" "Oh yeah, definitely an ex." Olivia's sharp eyes flicked toward Mia, giving her the kind of once-over that made it clear she was being evaluated. Then, without missing a beat, she turned back to Leo. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" Leo's response was effortless. He placed a light hand on Mia's waist, pulling her slightly closer. "This is Mia," he said smoothly. "My girlfriend." Mia was sure she imagined it, but she swore Olivia's smile faltered for half a second. Then, recovering quickly, she arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Girlfriend?" Olivia echoed, voice filled with curiosity. "Well, that's unexpected." Mia matched her smile, determined not to show a hint of hesitation. "Love is full of surprises," she said lightly. Leo suppressed a chuckle beside her, clearly amused. Olivia, however, wasn't so easily convinced. "Well," she mused, sipping her champagne. "Leo has never been easy to win over. You must be someone very—" She trailed off, her eyes flickering over Mia once more. And just like that, Mia knew. This night was far from over. Mia blinked, keeping her expression perfectly neutral. "He's actually easier than he seems," she said with a sweet, that innocent smile. "You just have to know which buttons to press." Beside her, Leo cleared his throat. She could practically feel him giving her a sideways glance, but she didn't take her eyes off Olivia. Olivia let out a soft laugh, though Mia could tell it wasn't entirely genuine. "Well, I hope you two are happy," Olivia said, still watching her with barely concealed curiosity. "But if you ever need advice, just know I've been where you are." Mia tilted her head slightly and smiled. "Thanks, but I think I'm doing just fine so far." Leo wrapped an arm around her and gave a gentle squeeze. "You definitely are," he said, his tone leaving no room for further discussion. And just like that, the conversation was over. As soon as Olivia turned and walked away, Mia let out a quiet breath. "Ex-girlfriend?" she asked, just to confirm. Leo nodded. "Yes." "Did things end well?" He hesitated. "Let's just say we had different views on what a relationship should be." Mia narrowed her eyes. "That's a very vague answer." Leo smirked. "And you ask too many questions." She laughed, shaking her head. No matter how much she tried to figure him out, Leo always found a way to dodge her questions. The rest of the evening passed more smoothly than she expected. For the first time since this arrangement began, she realized she didn't feel out of place anymore. What had started as a strictly professional deal was starting to feel comfortable. And that was slightly terrifying. By the time Leo pulled up outside her apartment, Mia felt exhausted, but also oddly satisfied. She had never imagined she'd be able to adapt so quickly to a world so far removed from her own. Just as she reached for the door handle, Leo spoke. "Mia?" She turned back. "Yeah?" He hesitated for half a second before giving her a small smile. "You're better at this than you think." Something stirred inside her at the words, but she shoved the feeling aside. "I know I am," she teased. "You just took too long to notice." Then she winked and stepped out of the car, realizing something surprising. For the first time in a long while, she was actually having fun. But what did that mean? She had no idea, and maybe she didn't want to know. Mia was just starting to get used to the idea of being Leo Sinclair's fake girlfriend. Or at least that's what she thought, until that morning. "Dinner with your family?" she repeated, her grip tightening around her coffee cup as if it were a lifeline. "You forgot to mention that little detail in the contract." Leo, who was casually flipping through some documents, barely glanced up. "It wasn't in the contract," he said, "but it's part of the deal." Mia set her coffee down with a loud thud. "That's not fair," she argued. "You know I'm terrible at keeping up appearances. What if I say the wrong thing? What if your family figures out it's all a lie?" Leo, still not looking up from his papers, simply said, "Then just do what you do best." She frowned. "And what's that?" "Improvise." Mia let out a dramatic sigh. "That's easy for you to say," she muttered. "You grew up in this world. I don't even know which fork to use at a formal dinner." At that, Leo finally looked up, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Just follow my lead," he assured her. "You'll be fine." Mia folded her arms, skeptical. "Are you sure about that?" "Absolutely." She exhaled a long breath. "This is going to go so wrong." Mia stepped through the grand entrance of the Sinclair estate, and her first instinct? Hold her breath. Everything about this place screamed intimidating. The sheer size of the mansion was overwhelming, the ceilings stretching impossibly high, the chandeliers dripping with what had to be real diamonds. The entire space gleamed with the kind of wealth she had only ever seen in magazines. And suddenly, Mia felt the urge to walk very carefully, as if even breathing wrong might break something insanely expensive. Her eyes flickered toward the massive dining table, and she swallowed hard. She was so not ready for this. Mia stared at the impossibly long dining table, set with plates that looked more expensive than her entire apartment. This wasn't just dinner. This was an event. As she and Leo stepped into the grand dining hall, the conversation quieted. All eyes turned toward her. "Okay, no pressure." Mia, a woman with refined elegance and a warm smile, stood up, her presence effortlessly graceful. "You finally decided to visit us," she said, directing the words at Leo. "Mom." Leo greeted her with a kiss on the cheek before turning to Mia. "This is Mia, my girlfriend." Mia instantly felt the weight of his mother's gaze, scanning her carefully. Then, to her surprise, the woman's expression softened into something genuinely welcoming. "Mia, dear, it's such a pleasure to meet you," she said warmly. "Leo never introduces us to anyone. We were starting to think he planned to live alone forever." Mia smiled nervously but quickly recovered. "He finally realized he wouldn't survive without me," she joked, shooting Leo a knowing glance. He held back a chuckle, resting a casual hand on her back. "Exactly." His mother beamed. "Well, sit. Let's eat." Mia took a seat beside Leo, trying to ignore the fact that her hands felt slightly clammy. To her relief, the conversation started off light. His mother asked her about her work, her background, and, of course, how they met. Mia stuck to the story they had rehearsed, answering smoothly and keeping her nerves in check. It was all going surprisingly well, until the door to the hall opened, and everything changed. A tall, imposing man entered the room, exuding authority with every step. His suit was immaculate, his posture commanding, and his expression unreadable. The air in the room shifted immediately. Leo's body tensed slightly beside her. "Dad," he murmured, his voice steady but noticeably guarded. Mia straightened in her seat, suddenly understanding why Leo had been so particular about this dinner. This was the real challenge. His father greeted the rest of the table with a nod before his piercing gaze landed on her. "So," he said, his voice even but firm, "this is Mia?" "Yes," Leo replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "My girlfriend." His father didn't look convinced. "Interesting," he mused. "You've always avoided serious relationships, and now, out of nowhere, you show up with someone?" A very pointed silence filled the air. Mia could feel the scrutiny. This wasn't just a polite introduction. This was an interrogation. But she had prepared for this. She kept her expression pleasant and offered a confident smile. "Well," she said lightly, "love has its own timing." Leo's mother smiled at that, clearly appreciating the answer. His father, however, remained unmoved. "And how did you two meet?" he asked, voice measured. Mia opened her mouth to answer, but Leo beat her to it. "In a bookstore," he said smoothly. Mia blinked, caught off guard. She turned to him, confused, but he remained completely composed. "She was holding a book I wanted," he continued, "and we both reached for it at the same time." Mia quickly caught on. He was improvising, so she jumped in. "He tried to argue that he had seen it first," she added, rolling her eyes. "But I wasn't about to back down that easily." Leo smirked. "So she challenged me to coffee." "Whoever convinced the other got to keep the book," Mia finished, catching onto his rhythm effortlessly. His mother smiled, clearly amused. "And who won?" she asked. Mia lifted her chin. "Me, obviously," Leo scoffed. "Don't kid yourself, I let you win." The entire table laughed, and just like that, the tension cracked. Even his father seemed to relax slightly, though he remained observant. Somehow, miraculously, they had pulled it off. The rest of the evening passed more smoothly. Talk shifted to travel, work, and upcoming family events. Mia did her best to keep up, answering naturally and engaging when needed. And to her own surprise, she was actually enjoying herself. Despite her initial nerves, she found herself appreciating his mother's warmth and even his father's direct, no-nonsense way of speaking. By the time they finally left the mansion, Mia let out a huge sigh of relief. "I thought I was going to faint in there," she admitted, shaking her head. Leo chuckled. "You did great." She shot him a look. "Your dad almost knocked me down with just one glance." "He's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally." Mia narrowed her eyes at him, skeptical. "Are you sure he bought it?" Leo hesitated for just a fraction of a second before replying. "He still has doubts," he admitted. "But for now, we're doing fine." Mia sighed. "Great, so all we need to do now is—" She trailed off, because, honestly, she wasn't sure what came next. But she did know one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "Keep up this act until the deal is done," Mia muttered, more to herself than to Leo. He stayed silent for a moment, watching her carefully. "You think this will be easy?" She flashed a confident smile. "Compared to tonight? Definitely." The problem was, she had no idea what was coming. And maybe, things were about to get a lot more complicated than she expected. Mia was still processing everything that had happened at the Sinclair family dinner. She had somehow survived, without tripping, without stuttering too much, and most impressively, without breaking anything. But one thing was clear. Leo's dad wasn't convinced. As they drove home, Mia glanced sideways at Leo. His expression was calm, unreadable, as if he was perfectly satisfied with the night's outcome. But she still felt like they were walking on thin ice. "Your dad didn't believe it," she finally said, breaking the silence. "He has doubts," Leo corrected, "but so far he hasn't called us out." Mia folded her arms. "That's because he's waiting for the right moment." Leo shrugged. "He can be suspicious all he wants. The important thing is that we're still in the game." She let out a long sigh. "That doesn't exactly comfort me." Leo shot her an amused look. "I'm paying you not to worry." Mia narrowed her eyes. "You're not paying me." "I am," he countered smoothly, "with expensive clothes, fancy dinners, and an experience you'd never have otherwise." She scoffed. "I still haven't decided if this experience is worth it." Leo smirked. "Oh, you're loving it." Mia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because the truth was, he wasn't entirely wrong. The next morning, Mia woke up to the sound of constant notifications buzzing on her phone. Still half asleep, she reached for it, blinking at the flood of messages lighting up her screen. She squinted at the first one. "Olivia, Mia, are you dating Leo Sinclair?" The second one wasn't much better. "Rachel, how come you have a billionaire boyfriend and didn't tell anyone?" The third was from an unknown number. "Hello, we're from a lifestyle magazine and would love to interview you about your relationship with Leo Sinclair." Mia's eyes widened. "What the?" she murmured, sitting up in bed. As she scrolled through more messages, her stomach sank. There were at least 15 more just like them. Then she saw the link. Her heart pounded as she clicked on it. And there it was, a gossip site. A photo of her and Leo from last night's dinner, his hand resting on her waist, her smiling at someone across the table. The headline? Leo Sinclair finally confirms a relationship. Who is Mia Donovan, the woman who won over the billionaire? Mia let out a choked noise and threw the phone onto the bed as if it had caught fire. No, this wasn't part of the plan. Before she could fully panic, her phone started ringing. She glanced at the screen. Of course it was Leo. She took a deep breath and answered. "Did you see this?" she demanded before he could say a word. "Good morning to you too," Leo replied, sounding far too amused. "And yes, I saw it." "How did this happen?" "Reporters do that," he said casually. "It's not like we were going to stay under the radar forever. But now everyone is talking about it. People are texting me. I even have magazines asking for interviews." Leo sighed. "Ignore it. It'll blow over in a few days." Mia huffed. "You really think it's going to be that simple?" "Of course. The media always finds a new story. She wasn't convinced, but at the moment she had no idea what to do. "This is going to cause problems," she muttered. "Only if you let it." She groaned, rubbing her temples. "I need coffee." "Well, you'll need to be awake for tonight anyway." Mia frowned. "Tonight? A gala dinner," he said smoothly. "Be ready by 7. She froze. "Leo, you can't just throw this." But he had already hung up. Mia stared at her phone. She had survived last night. But tonight? Tonight was a whole new battlefield. "Of course I can," Leo said, his tone effortlessly smug. "It's in our contract." Mia gritted her teeth. "You love seeing me panic, don't you?" He chuckled. "I like seeing how you handle it." Mia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "You're lucky I can't back out of this deal right now." "I know," he said easily. "I'll see you at 7. Before she could protest, he hung up. Mia stared at her phone. This man is going to drive me insane. At exactly 7, Leo arrived to pick her up. He was wearing a ridiculously sharp suit, looking as if he had just walked off the cover of a luxury magazine. Meanwhile, Mia was still adjusting her dress, praying she wouldn't trip over her own feet. The moment she slid into the car, Leo glanced at her and said, "You look beautiful." She shot him a skeptical look. "You're only saying that because you have to keep up appearances. What if I'm telling the truth?" She turned to him, eyes narrowing slightly. "You never say anything without a reason, Leo?" His lips curled into a smirk. "Smart." Mia rolled her eyes. As soon as they arrived at the venue, she knew this was going to be 100 times worse than she had imagined. The entrance was packed with photographers, cameras flashing like lightning. Guests draped in designer fashion moved elegantly past them, but all eyes were on her. Mia's stomach twisted. Leo stepped out of the car first, looking completely at ease. Before she could hesitate, he extended a hand toward her. She took it, and suddenly they were stepping onto the red carpet. "Just smile," he murmured. Mia did as told, but her heart was racing. Cameras snapped, voices whispered. She felt like she had been dropped into a scene from a movie, except she wasn't sure she knew her lines. As soon as they entered the ballroom, Leo pulled her close. "Breathe." She exhaled sharply, realizing she'd been holding her breath. "This is too much." "You'll get used to it." She wasn't so sure about that. The night carried on with an endless cycle of greetings, smiles, and introductions. Mia did her best to keep up, but the entire event felt like a play where everyone else knew the script but her. Then, just when she thought she had made it through without disaster, someone grabbed her arm. She turned quickly, startled, and came face to face with Olivia. "You've got guts," Olivia said smoothly, a not-so-friendly smile playing on her lips. Mia blinked. "Excuse me?" Olivia crossed her arms. "Do you really think you're fooling anyone? That you and Leo are actually together?" Mia forced a calm smile. "Are you jealous?" Olivia laughed, but it was far from genuine. "Jealous? No." She tilted her head. "I just find it fascinating that a regular girl like you suddenly thinks she belongs in this world." Irritation flared in Mia's chest. "And what exactly is wrong with that?" she asked coolly. "The problem," Olivia said, her voice dropping slightly, "is that I know this isn't real." Before Mia could respond, a familiar hand slid around her waist. "Leo, is there a problem?" he asked smoothly. Olivia flashed a perfectly fake smile. "None at all. I was just talking to Mia about how surprising it is to see her here." Leo smiled, cool, effortless, and calculated. "Mia always surprises me," he said lightly. "That's why I like her so much." Mia blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Olivia narrowed her eyes, but said nothing. Leo didn't give her the chance to. He gently steered Mia away, ending the conversation. As soon as they were far enough, Mia turned to him, eyes narrowed. "You did that on purpose." He feigned innocence. "Did what?" "You knew she didn't believe us." Leo shrugged. "Now she has fewer reasons to doubt." Mia shook her head. "You like playing with people, don't you?" "Only when the game is worth it." Mia wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. But what troubled her most was that she wasn't sure she still wanted this to end. Mia was still trying to process everything. The dinner with Leo's family, the articles about her on gossip sites, and now Olivia cornering her like a villain in a drama series. It felt like the universe was testing her patience. The gala continued, filled with important guests and elegant conversations, but Mia could feel it. Every pair of eyes on her, watching, waiting, and she had no idea what was coming next. Instead of letting Samantha's words get to her, Mia made a decision. She wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. She picked up a glass of juice from a passing waiter's tray, taking a slow sip as she watched Samantha walk away. "You don't have to react to her provocations," Leo murmured beside her. "I know," Mia replied, still watching Samantha disappear into the crowd. "But honestly, she really needs a new hobby." Leo let out a quiet laugh and took a sip of his own drink. "I have to admit, I expected you to be more nervous about all this." Mia sighed. "Oh, I am nervous. But after surviving your dad's interrogation and waking up to my face on gossip websites, nothing surprises me anymore." "Well then," Leo's voice was too casual, "maybe you won't be surprised by what comes next." Mia stopped mid-sip and looked at him suspiciously. "What did you do?" Leo put on his most innocent expression. "I didn't do anything." Mia narrowed her eyes. She had learned to be very wary of that tone. "But," he continued smoothly, "I think you should know that my mom liked you so much, she wants to host a more intimate dinner for us." Mia nearly choked. "Another dinner?" she sputtered. "I barely survived the first one." Leo chuckled. "My mom is convinced she's finally found someone who can handle me." Mia groaned. "At this point, I'm starting to doubt my own sanity." He smirked. "You can still back out," she scoffed. "And give up the chance to keep pretending I'm a millionaire for a month? No way." Leo's satisfied smile told her he had expected that answer. The night continued without any major surprises until an older man dressed in a perfectly tailored suit approached them with a firm, commanding presence. "Nicholas," the man greeted, shaking Leo's hand with the ease of someone accustomed to power. "It's been a while." "Mr. Whitmore?" Leo greeted back with a professional nod. "How have you been?" Mia immediately picked up on the shift in Leo's tone. This guy was important. "Very well, very well." Mr. Whitmore's sharp eyes then turned to her. "And who is this young lady?" Leo rested a hand lightly on her waist. "My girlfriend," he said effortlessly. "Mia?" Mia smiled and extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Mr. Whitmore studied her for a second before shaking her hand. "The pleasure is mine." Then he turned back to Leo, a small smirk on his lips. "So, when do you plan to bring Miss Donovan into the world of business?" Mia blinked. "Wait, what?" She started, caught completely off guard. But before she could say anything, Leo smoothly cut in. "Soon, Mr. Whitmore," he said. "Mia has a lot of talent. She could be a valuable partner for future projects." Mia somehow managed to keep her expression neutral, but inside she was stunned. Leo had never mentioned anything about business, and now he was casually telling one of the most influential men in the room that she was a potential business partner? Mr. Whitmore nodded approvingly. "Good to know. We'll talk more about it another time." And just like that, he walked away, blending back into the crowd. Mia turned to Leo, crossing her arms. "Okay, explain." Leo sipped his drink, looking far too pleased with himself. "Just a little boost to the credibility of our relationship." Mia narrowed her eyes. "You want me to pretend I know about business now?" "You don't have to pretend anything," he said easily. "But if you want a better job, this could be an opportunity." Mia huffed. "I knew there was some catch to this deal." Leo simply shrugged, grabbing another glass from a passing waiter's tray. "Relax, you'll handle it just fine." Mia wasn't so sure, but for now? She decided to file this away as a problem for future Mia. Right now, she just wanted to get through the night without any more surprises. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans. As they strolled through the ballroom, a waiter passed by, offering a tray of appetizers. Mia, distracted, grabbed one without thinking. Just as she was about to take a bite, Leo grabbed her wrist. She froze, confused. "What?" she asked. Leo's expression was unreadable. "Are you allergic to seafood?" Mia frowned. "No, why?" But the look on his face told her something was wrong. "Because you just picked up a shrimp canapé," Leo said smoothly. "And if you were allergic, this would be a really bad way to find out." Mia blinked, looking down at the appetizer in her hand, then back at him. "Were you paying attention to what I grabbed to eat?" Leo shrugged. "You're my girlfriend. I'm supposed to care about those things." For a second, Mia just stared at him, processing the unexpected remark. That was surprisingly thoughtful. Leo must have noticed her hesitation because he smirked slightly. "Don't get used to it." Mia rolled her eyes, but despite herself, she couldn't help the small smile tugging at her lips. The rest of the night passed quickly, and soon they were in the car, heading home. "I think we passed the test tonight," Mia said, exhaling deeply. You were great. I know. Leo laughed. And modest too. Mia smiled, turning to look out the window as the city lights blurred past. Well, now that the entire media believes our story, what's next? Leo was quiet for a moment before answering. Now, we have to keep convincing my family. Oh, great, she groaned. More dinners with judgmental stares. Exactly. Mia sighed. If I survive this, I deserve a prize. Leo smirked. You're already getting a prize, a month in my world. She shot him a side glance. I'm still deciding whether that's a blessing or a curse. His smirk deepened. You'll find out soon. A shiver ran down Mia's spine at his words, because deep down, she knew he was right. Something inside her told her that this deal was becoming more real than it should be. And that was exactly what scared her. Mia woke up to the relentless buzzing of her phone. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. Her body still ached from last night's event, and the last thing she wanted was to deal with another round of surprises. But then, she saw the caller ID. Leo. She groaned. Of course, she picked up, her voice still heavy with sleep. You do know there's something called appropriate hours to call someone, right? Good morning to you too, Leo replied, sounding far too awake. Mia frowned. You've been up for hours, haven't you? Possibly, she sighed, rubbing her eyes. What do you want? We need to reinforce our credibility. Mia sat up in bed, suddenly more awake. What exactly does that mean? Photos. She blinked. Photos? Yep. Now that we're officially on the media's radar, we need to make sure we look like a real couple. Mia scratched her head. You want us to be photographed together? Exactly. A casual outing, maybe a romantic lunch, something that'll make people look at us and think, oh, they're really in love. Mia groaned. You take this contract way too seriously. And you should too, he countered smoothly. I'll pick you up in an hour. Before she could argue, he hung up. Mia stared at her phone for a second, then groaned into her pillow. What did I do to deserve this? An hour later, Mia stepped out of her apartment to find Leo leaning casually against a ridiculously sleek luxury car. He was wearing sunglasses, his posture relaxed, looking way too much like he had just stepped out of a high-end commercial. She slid into the passenger seat with a glare. You act like you didn't just drag someone into a fake date on zero notice. Leo smirked. Consider it practice for future events. She shot him a look. Future events? You plan to drag me into more of these situations? You knew what you were signing up for. Mia folded her arms. I knew I had to pretend to be your girlfriend. I didn't know that meant being chased by photographers. Leo simply smirked. Welcome to my world. Mia let out an exhausted sigh, looking out the window as they drove through the city. Soon, they pulled up to an elegant restaurant with a stunning outdoor terrace, perfect for being casually photographed. Of course, the moment they stepped inside, Leo pulled out a chair for her. Mia raised an eyebrow. Look at you, a gentleman. Leo's lips twitched, just keeping up appearances. She laughed, shaking her head as she reached for the menu. But then she noticed something. People were already watching. The game had officially begun. Leo was no longer looking at her, his attention had shifted elsewhere. What's wrong? Mia asked, lowering her menu. He tilted his head slightly, subtly signaling with his eyes. She followed his gaze and felt her stomach tighten. A group of photographers stood a few feet away, pretending to blend in. They're already here? She whispered. Of course. Leo's voice was calm, unbothered. I told you we needed to look convincing. Mia rolled her eyes. Does this mean I have to act all lovey-dovey while I eat? Exactly. Mia grabbed a piece of bread from the basket on the table and pointed it at him. You do realize this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever done, right? You've said that before, and I'll say it again. Leo just smiled, picked up his glass of wine, and raised it slightly in a toast. Here's to the perfect plan. Mia clinked her glass against his. Perfect, I'd call it risky. And where's the fun without a little risk? She shook her head, but despite herself, she smiled. Because as crazy as this was, she had to admit, she was having way more fun than she should be. After lunch, Leo suggested they take a walk in the park. Mia immediately noticed the photographers trailing behind them. Don't they ever get tired? She muttered. It's their job. Mia sighed but decided to play along. When Leo took her hand, she didn't pull away. When he smiled at her, she smiled back. And when he leaned in, whispering something probably meaningless near her ear, she laughed as if he had just told the funniest thing in the world. You're good at this, he murmured. I'm an excellent actress, Leo smirked. Or maybe you're just having fun. Mia opened her mouth to argue, but a familiar voice cut through the air. Well, this is interesting. Mia turned sharply and froze. Ryan, her stomach twisted uncomfortably. There he was, standing just a few feet away, arms crossed, his expression laced with suspicion. Ryan? She blurted out, genuinely surprised. He let out a dry laugh. I thought it was weird when I first saw your name linked to Leo Sinclair in the news. His eyes flickered between them. But seeing it in person, even harder to believe. Mia forced herself to stay composed. What are you doing here? Ryan shrugged. Taking a walk. His eyes didn't leave her. And you? Playing the part? Beside her, Leo remained silent, simply observing. Mia folded her arms. Are you jealous? Ryan let out a bitter chuckle. No, I just think all of this is convenient. Mia took a slow, deep breath. I don't owe you any explanations. Ryan looked at her for a long moment before turning his attention to Leo. Are you sure you know what you're getting yourself into? Leo's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes held a sharp edge. I'm absolutely sure. Ryan frowned but didn't push further. After one last lingering glance at Mia, he turned and walked away. She let out a heavy sigh. That was weird. Leo shoved his hands in his pockets. He clearly hasn't gotten over it. Mia rolled her eyes. Yeah, well, I haven't gotten over how much he embarrassed me either, but you don't see me going around confronting people. Leo chuckled. You handled him well. Thanks, but I'd prefer not to ever have to deal with him again. Leo smirked. With all this media attention, I think it's going to be hard for him to forget you anytime soon. Mia sighed, rubbing her temples. Because unfortunately, he was right. The whole act was working better than expected. But at the same time, it was starting to feel more real than it should. And Mia wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a disaster waiting to happen. Because if there was one thing she was finally realizing, the line between pretending and reality was getting dangerously thin. Mia couldn't pinpoint the exact moment everything started feeling too real. Maybe it was during dinner with Leo's family, when she found herself genuinely enjoying his mom's company. Or maybe it was now. As they walked through the park, hands still intertwined, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was acting anymore. Mia had been fine with Leo holding her hand in the park. That didn't bother her. At least that's what she told herself. But now, sitting in a cafe, staring at yet another headline about them, she was beginning to realize what was actually bothering her. She didn't feel like she was just pretending anymore. You're staring at that phone like it's about to bite you, Leo remarked, sliding into the seat across from her with 2 coffees in hand. Mia grabbed hers but kept her eyes glued to the screen. It's just, all of this still feels unreal. Leo leaned back, completely at ease. You've said that before. And I'll keep saying it. She sighed, finally setting her phone down. You might be used to this kind of exposure, but I'm not. He took a slow sip of his coffee. You're handling it way better than I thought you would. Mia groaned and rested her chin in her palm. If I had known one impulsive kiss would lead to all of this, maybe I would have just run the other way. Leo smirked. That wouldn't have been as fun. Mia rolled her eyes but couldn't stop the small smile that slipped through. So, what now? She asked, taking a sip of her coffee. What's the next step? Leo didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I want you to stay with me. Mia blinked. What? The contract isn't over yet, she reminded him. I'm not talking about just the contract, she frowned. Then what are you talking about? Leo took a deep breath. My dad's still suspicious. He wants more concrete proof that we're really together. A chill ran down Mia's spine. And how exactly do you plan to prove that? Leo hesitated for half a second before saying, I want you to move in with me. Mia froze. You what? It would be temporary, he clarified quickly. Just long enough for my family to see that we're taking this seriously. Mia carefully put her coffee cup down before she accidentally spilled it all over herself. You want me to move into your house? That's crazy. Leo shrugged. Up until now, this whole thing has been crazy. Yeah, well, this is on a whole other level. Leo tilted his head slightly. Do you want the plan to work or not? Mia opened her mouth to argue, but stopped, because damn it, He had a point. If they wanted to keep up the act until the end, they needed to make it believable. But living with him? That was too big of a step. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, biting her lip. Leo sighed. Look, I know it sounds like a lot, but think about it. You'll have your own space. You won't have to change anything in your routine. We just need to look like a couple living together for a while. Mia took a deep breath, her mind racing. This still feels wrong. Leo crossed his arms and studied her carefully. Then tell me what's stopping you. She opened her mouth, and nothing came out. Because honestly, she wasn't sure. Sure, the whole situation was insane, but did she actually have a solid reason to say no? And the worst part, no matter how hard she tried to convince herself otherwise, a small part of her was curious. What would it be like to really spend more time with Leo? She let out an exhausted sigh. I need some time to think. Leo nodded. All right, but don't take too long. His expression turned amused. My dad is already planning to test us again. Mia groaned and buried her face in her hands. I hate this contract. Leo chuckled. Not more than I hate family dinners. Mia lifted her head just enough to glare at him. So we're even then? Leo raised his coffee cup in mock toast. To our shared ruin. Mia sighed, clinking her cup against his. To our shared ruin. But as she took another sip, the thought nagged at the back of her mind. The more time she spent with Leo, the harder it was to remember that this was all just an act. The next few days were filled with one constant thought. Should she do it? Should she actually move in with Leo? Mia tried to rationalize her hesitation, tried to convince herself that saying yes would be a mistake. But the more she thought about it, the less sure she became. Because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as against the idea as she should be. And that was the most dangerous thought of all. Mia tried to think rationally. Moving into Leo's house, temporarily, wouldn't be the end of the world. He had already assured her she'd have her own space, and deep down, she knew this arrangement wouldn't last forever. But the doubt lingered. Could she really keep the line between real and fake from blurring? That question was still on her mind when Leo invited her over for dinner that night, saying they needed to talk. Mia agreed, and soon after she found herself standing at his door. When he opened it, she immediately regretted not mentally preparing herself. He was wearing a button-up shirt, the first few buttons undone, something that should be illegal because it made it very hard for her to concentrate. Focus, Mia, focus. Come in, Leo said, stepping aside to let her through. Mia walked in, glancing around. She had been here before, but she had never really paid attention to the details. The apartment was huge, that part wasn't surprising, but somehow it still felt cozy. Leo headed to the kitchen, grabbing 2 wine glasses before handing one to her. Have you decided? He asked. Mia took the glass, inhaling deeply before answering. Yes, I'll move in, temporarily. Leo raised an eyebrow. No emotional blackmail? No hesitation? No emotional blackmail, she confirmed. He smirked. You'll get used to it faster than you think. Mia wasn't so sure about that, but she was about to find out. Over the next few days, Mia packed her things, and by the end of the week, she was officially living in Leo Sinclair's house. The move itself wasn't as difficult as she expected, but living together? That was another story. Mia quickly discovered that Leo was methodical. He liked schedules, routines, and apparently had no idea what instant coffee was, because his insanely complicated espresso machine looked like something NASA would use to launch a rocket. Mia, on the other hand, she liked strong, fast coffee, didn't believe in set schedules, and to her utter horror, discovered that Leo organized his clothes by color and type. This was going to be interesting. On the first morning, Mia shuffled into the kitchen in a baggy hoodie, hair a complete mess. Leo looked at her for a moment before smirking. I knew you had a laid-back style, but this is a whole new level. Mia plopped into a chair and grabbed a piece of toast. I woke up, I'm dressed, and I'm ready to start the day. That's already a win. Leo laughed, sitting across from her. Welcome to your new home, Mia. She narrowed her eyes, biting into her toast. If I find a set of house rules taped to the fridge, I'm out of here. Leo raised his hands in mock surrender. No rules, just a few guidelines. Mia groaned, grabbing her coffee. This is going to be chaos, and just like that. Without realizing it, Mia took a step that would change everything. Because no matter how many times she reminded herself that this was just a fake arrangement, Living with Leo made that lie feel more real every single day. Mia had never imagined she'd be living in a billionaire's house, let alone Leo Sinclair's house. At first, she tried to be as discreet as possible, tried to avoid any situation that would make this arrangement feel weirder than it already was. But she quickly realized that was impossible, because, despite claiming he was always busy, Leo was somehow always around, and he loved to tease her. "Do you always leave your socks lying around like this?" Leo asked, arms crossed as he stared at her feet, currently bare and propped up comfortably on the sofa. "They're not scattered," Mia said without looking away from the show she was watching. "They're artistically arranged." Leo let out a dry laugh. "Ah, I see. So modern art now includes socks thrown on the floor?" Mia grabbed a pillow and pretended to throw it at him. "You dragged me into this house, now deal with the consequences." Leo chuckled and sat down beside her. "I just expected a little more." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Organization." Mia groaned dramatically. "I knew you were going to say that. And the worst part? This ridiculous new life of hers? It was starting to feel dangerously normal." Mia exhaled dramatically, stretching out on the couch. "You already knew me before hiring me, Leo. You should have known what you were getting into." Leo simply smirked. And that's when Mia realized something. Their back and forth, their constant teasing, it didn't feel like acting anymore. It felt real. And that was a problem. Because the hardest part of living together wasn't pretending to be a couple for everyone else. It was pretending that she wasn't starting to feel something when they were alone. Like tonight, for example. They had been invited to a charity event hosted by Leo's family. Another glamorous night of polite smiles, whispered conversations, and acting like she belonged in this world. But this time, something felt different. She was finishing up in the bedroom when she heard his voice. "Mia." She stepped out into the hallway and nearly forgot how to breathe. Leo stood there in a sharp suit, effortlessly elegant, looking like he had walked straight out of a magazine. But what really caught her attention? The small box in his hands. He hesitated for a moment before walking toward her. "For you." Mia frowned, taking the box and slowly opening the lid. Inside was a delicate necklace, a small pendant catching the light. She blinked. "What? I thought it would go well with your dress," he said casually. Mia stared at him, suspicion creeping in. "This wasn't part of the deal." "I know." "Then why are you giving this to me?" Leo hesitated for just a fraction of a second before answering. "Because I wanted to." Mia felt something tighten in her chest. She wanted to believe this was just part of the act, that he was simply trying to make their story more convincing. But the way he looked at her, this wasn't just that. And she had no idea what to do with that feeling. The charity event was a success. Leo and Mia moved through the rooms seamlessly, greeting influential guests, posing for photos, playing the part of the city's most intriguing couple. Mia was starting to get used to the curious stares and the whispers surrounding them. But what really surprised her? Leo. This time, he wasn't just keeping up appearances. He held her hand without hesitation, laughed at her jokes effortlessly. And at one point, when he thought no one was looking, he reached out and gently adjusted her necklace. But Mia saw. And that's when she realized the real problem. She was falling in love, but she couldn't. This was a contract. A lie. Something that would end soon. So why didn't her heart seem to know that? By the time they got home, the silence between them felt different. Not awkward, but heavy with something Mia couldn't define. She slipped off her heels and collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. "I never want to wear high heels again," she groaned. Leo smirked and sat down beside her. "You did great today." "You always say that." "Because it's true." Mia sighed, turning to look at him. And for some reason, the words left her lips before she could stop them. "Leo, this is still just a contract, right?" Leo was silent for a moment. Then, "Yes." But his eyes said otherwise. Mia wanted to believe his answer. She needed to. But then, without warning, Leo reached up, his fingers brushing lightly against her face as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It was small, simple, but her heart raced. She had to get out of there. "Good night, Leo," she said quickly, standing up and heading straight for the bedroom before she did something really stupid. Because if she stayed 1 second longer, she knew she wouldn't be able to stop herself. And this time, There would be no way to pretend it wasn't real. Mia spent the night tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, trying to push down the avalanche of emotions flooding her mind. She had been so careful, so determined to keep things separate. But now, she wasn't sure where the act ended. And real feelings began. And that was terrifying. Mia barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. The way Leo had held her hand at the event. The way he had adjusted her necklace without even realizing what he was doing. The way he had looked at her when he moved a strand of hair from her face. None of it should matter. But it did. And that was the problem. By the time morning came, Mia had made a decision. She couldn't keep avoiding this. She left her room and walked into the kitchen, where Leo was already dressed, sipping coffee like it was just another day. But for Mia, it wasn't. Taking a deep breath, she spoke. "We need to talk." Leo raised an eyebrow and set his cup down. "This sounds serious." "Because it is." Mia crossed her arms. "The contract is ending." Leo was silent for a moment, just watching her. "Yes." He tilted his head slightly. "And after that, we go back to our normal lives." Mia swallowed hard. "Is that what you want?" That was the question she had been avoiding. Because once the contract ended, she'd go back to her old life. And Leo? He'd go back to being the untouchable billionaire he had always been. That was how it was supposed to be. So why did the thought of leaving make her chest ache? She forced a smile. Of course. That was the deal, right? Leo kept his eyes locked on her. "If you say so." There was something in his tone that made Mia hesitate. Like he was waiting for her to say something else. But she couldn't. Because admitting she wanted more meant taking a risk. And Mia had never been good at risks. The following days passed too quickly. Mia tried to convince herself that everything was fine. She stuck to her routine, ignored the tightness in her chest every time she thought about packing her bags. Leo, on the other hand, he seemed distant, still polite, still playing his part perfectly. But there was a weight in the air. Like they both knew something was changing. Like they both knew neither of them wanted to be the first to admit it. Then, the night before the contract was set to end, Leo finally broke the silence. "Have you packed your things?" Mia looked at him from across the room. "Not yet." Leo nodded slowly. Didn't say anything else. She wanted to ask him, did he want her to stay? Had this all just been a game for him? Or was he feeling what she was feeling, something bigger than both of them? But instead, she smiled and lied. "I'll leave tomorrow morning." Leo nodded once more. "All right." The next morning, Mia was finishing up the last of her packing when she heard a knock at the door. She took a deep breath and opened it. Leo stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Are you really leaving?" His voice was quieter than usual. Mia tried to smile, but it was a miserable attempt. That was the plan from the start, wasn't it? Leo didn't look away. "Plans change." Her heart raced. "Leo?" He took a step closer. "Answer me this," he said, his voice lower, steadier. "If I asked you to stay, would you?" Mia opened her mouth, but no words came out. This was it. The moment she had been running from since the second she realized this wasn't just a contract anymore. She could say yes, admit that somewhere along the way the lines blurred, that she had stopped pretending. But what if he was only asking because of pride? What if, the moment she said yes, he'd realize he didn't want this after all? She couldn't risk it, so she forced a smile. "Leo, don't make this harder than it already is." For a brief second, his eyes flashed with something raw. But then, he just nodded and stepped aside. Mia walked past him, each step feeling heavier than the last. And the worst part, she didn't know if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Leo nodded slowly. "I understand." And without saying anything else, he left. Mia closed her eyes, feeling a pain in her chest she didn't want to acknowledge. She had done the right thing, hadn't she? She grabbed her suitcase, took a deep breath, and walked out the door. The following days were a blur. Mia went back to her old routine, but nothing felt the same. Her apartment felt smaller. The coffee she used to love didn't taste right anymore, and everything, absolutely everything, reminded her of Leo. She tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it was normal. After all, they had spent so much time together, it made sense that it would take a while to adjust to life without him. But then, a week later, she passed by the window of a jewelry store in the mall, and something caught her eye. The necklace. The same one Leo had given her the night before the charity event. Mia froze. She stared at the delicate piece, feeling her heart tighten. And that's when she realized she had made a mistake. Mia didn't waste any time. She jumped into a taxi and went straight to Leo's house. The ride felt endless. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. What if it was too late? What if he had already moved on? What if she had ruined everything? By the time she reached his doorstep, she barely had time to breathe before she rang the doorbell. Seconds stretched into eternity. And then, the door opened. There he was. The same intense eyes. The same unreadable expression. The same effortless posture. But for a moment, just a moment, she saw surprise in his eyes. "Mia?" His voice was calm, but she heard the slight tension beneath it. "What are you doing here?" Mia took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. But then she realized she didn't need a long speech. She knew what she wanted. So instead of speaking, she took a step forward, lifted her face, and kissed him. This kiss was different. No desperation. No uncertainty. No pretending. Just them. When she pulled away, she looked up at him and smiled. "I want to stay." For a moment, Leo said nothing. He just watched her, as if making sure she was really there. And then, finally, he smiled. "Took you long enough to figure that out?" Mia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. "You could have told me sooner. I was waiting for you to figure it out on your own." She crossed her arms. "And what if I hadn't come?" Leo shrugged. "I would have come after you." Mia blinked. "Really?" "Really." His expression softened. "I never planned on falling for you, Mia, but it happened." Her heart melted. "I'm glad it happened." And then, for the first time, they kissed without needing to pretend. Mia never imagined her life would take this turn. She had started this whole thing just trying to escape an awkward situation. And now, she was completely in love with Leo Sinclair. Even without a contract forcing them to stay together, Mia never left. At first, she feared it was just a fleeting dream. But day by day, she realized it wasn't. It was real. And to her total shock, Leo seemed more and more comfortable with having her in his life. Of course, living together was still chaotic. Mia still left her socks lying around the apartment. Leo still organized his clothes by color. But somehow, it worked. She had never been this happy, but what she didn't know was that Leo had a plan. A big plan. And it involved a certain very shiny ring. It started subtly. Leo began making mysterious phone calls, seemed lost in thought more often than usual, and occasionally he left the house without saying where he was going. Mia tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just work. Maybe it was nothing. But after a week of suspicious behavior, she knew something was up. So she did the only logical thing she could think of. She decided to investigate. And what she found would change everything. Mia knew something was up. So she did the only logical thing. She followed Leo. Wearing oversized sunglasses and a giant coat, she definitely looked more like a character from a comedy movie than an actual spy. She trailed him through the streets of New York, doing her best to remain undetected, which wasn't easy considering she nearly walked into a street sign twice. Then, Leo stopped in front of a jewelry store. Mia's heart skipped a beat. He was buying a ring? If it was an engagement ring, she might have to dramatically faint just to process the information. But before she could completely spiral, she noticed something. Leo didn't go inside. Instead, he talked to someone at the entrance, nodded, and then left. Mia, now too curious to back out, took a deep breath and went in. The saleswoman greeted her with a polite smile. "Can I help you?" Mia forced a nervous laugh. Yeah, a tall, handsome, and annoyingly methodical man just stopped by here. Was he buying something?" The saleswoman blinked before recognition dawned. "Oh, you mean Leo Sinclair?" Mia cleared her throat. "Yeah, that's him." The woman smiled knowingly. "He was arranging something special." Mia's pulse spiked. "Something special?" she asked. "Like, really special?" The saleswoman's smile turned mysterious. "You'll see soon." Mia left the store with sweaty palms and a racing heart. Now, all she had to do was wait. The following weekend, Leo invited her to a special dinner. Mia was already suspicious. So when he took her to an insanely fancy restaurant with a view of the entire city, she knew something was about to happen. And it did. After dinner, Leo led her to the rooftop of the building. The night breeze was soft, the city lights glittering below them like a dream. Mia wrapped her arms around herself, taking in the breathtaking view. "This is beautiful, Leo." He smiled. Not as beautiful as you. Mia blinked. Wow, that was unexpectedly romantic, he chuckled. I have a few more surprises for you. Before she could ask what he meant, Leo suddenly knelt down. Mia froze. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure she was about to pass out. Then, Leo pulled out a small box, opened it, revealing a stunning ring. Mia's hands flew to her face. Oh my God, Leo smiled. Mia Donovan, I never planned on falling for you, but it happened. His voice was steady. Sure, you messed up my routine, made me laugh when I didn't want to, showed me that life can be fun even when it feels like chaos. Mia felt her eyes sting with tears. That was unexpectedly sweet. Leo smirked. So tell me, my messy and adorable Mia, will you marry me? Mia was so overwhelmed she forgot how to breathe. But as always, her instinct was to make the moment unique. So instead of answering right away, she pretended to think. I don't know. She tapped her chin dramatically. Are you ready for a future where your clothes will never be perfectly organized by color again? Leo raised an eyebrow. I've already accepted that reality. And where my collection of scattered socks will continue to grow uncontrollably? He sighed. It'll be a challenge, but I accept it. Mia laughed, wiping away a tear. Then I guess I have no choice. Leo's expression softened. Does that mean yes? She smiled. Leo stood, scooped her into his arms, and spun her around before kissing her. And in that moment, Mia knew. This kiss was completely different from the first one. Because this time, there were no doubts. They were real. Their wedding was a dream. The ceremony took place outdoors in a charming garden, decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights. Leo, standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, waited for her with a smile that made Mia's heart melt. As she walked down the aisle to the soft sound of music, she realized this was the most beautiful moment of her life. When she finally reached him, Leo took her hand. You look beautiful, Mia. And she knew. She had never been happier. Mia smiled. You're not so bad yourself. Their vows were nothing short of emotional. Leo spoke about how he never imagined that one unexpected kiss would change his life forever. Mia spoke about how he taught her that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. And then, finally, they said I do. The moment Leo kissed her, Mia knew. There was no longer a contract, no plan, no agreement. There was only them. Together, forever. What did you think of Mia and Leo's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to follow all our stories. And if you love emotional stories like this one, check out more by clicking here on the final screen. Thank you for watching.